Madam Web was the train wreck that we all saw coming from a mile away. The story follows Cassandra Webb, a New York City paramedic who starts to show signs of clairvoyance. Forced to confront revelations about her past, she must protect three young women from a mysterious adversary who wants them dead. I don't need to tell you. I don't think you need anyone to tell you at this point. I'm sure we've all seen the reviews. I'm sure we've all seen the box office performance. This movie sucks. So this video's not gonna be that long, but there are some interesting things in there, which is why I wanted to make this. So let's get into those. Something that I'm sure most people would not say about this film, something that but I know that there's at least one person out there who's gonna agree with me, one person that felt the same way that I did. The first 3/4 of this movie is surprisingly bearable. Like, the feeling that I got for 3/4 of this film, that is most of the film, is that it is surprisingly bearable. It's not, well, it is bad, it's trash, it is terrible, but you know how, like, when people are abused, like, not to get dark or anything, but like, you know how when people get abused, right? At first, like, it's this terrible bad thing, right? And of course I'm not saying that it gets good or anything like that, but I'm just saying that, like, if it keeps happening to them time after time for months, their bodies kind of get, like, used to it and kind of expect it. So it reaches this level of, like, medium level kind of, like, expected kind of thing. And it's like, and it's bad and it's terrible and it's horrible, of course, but they kind of get used to it. I forgot the name for that term, but that's the feeling that I got watching Madam Web for 3/4 of the film, which is most of the film. It was so weird. It had this weird, cheesy but charming feel to it, kind of like a good episode of a CW superhero show. It reached this medium level where, because everything is happening and it's at this same exact level, because everything is bad, it felt bearable. It felt cheesy because it is cheesy, it is corny, but it's also kind of charming in a way because they're trying with the terrible things that they're given. That's the feeling that I got from the actors and from pretty much everything about this film. So to get into the points, first of all, the acting is pretty bad throughout, all right? Everyone in this film, apart from probably Adam Scott and what's her name, and Emma Roberts, pretty much everyone else gave a bad performance. But it's not their fault necessarily. Everyone tried. I could see them trying. I could see them doing their best with what they were given, which is less than nothing, like bottom of the barrel, pits of hell levels of quality here, which is what they had to work with. And I'm sure that it was terrible. Well, I'm not sure, of course I wasn't there, but I could imagine that it would have been terrible working with this material on film. It's not their fault, it's the fault of reason number two, well, point number two, bad point number two, which is the writing. The writing of this film is absolutely horrible, absolutely terrible. Probably the worst writing that I heard and seen for many years. This is even worse than the MCU, and the MCU at this point is pretty bad. This is terrible, horrible, absolutely vile, like putrid levels of writing. It was absolutely terrible. I I don't know how they made it through these lines. Bad point number three, the special effects are terrible. Every single special effect in this film is absolutely terrible. Absolute failure, absolute, like, all the Spider-Man stuff, like car crashes, bus crashes, ambulance crashes, everything looked pretty bad. The scenes where Madam Web is underneath the water were the absolute worst. How is it this bad? It just can't be this bad. I'm sorry. In a world where the creator exists with $80 million budget, exactly like this film, and has good CGI in it, how come this film could not get some good CGI in it? I'm sorry. It's just completely inexcusable. It was terrible, horrible. Not much to go into because it was terrible and horrible. That's all you need to know. Number four, the editing style is terrible. Whatever short bursts of action scenes, whatever short bursts of action, whether it be driving, running, anything from walking, flashback scenes, like just the overall editing of this film was overly flashy. They did way too much than they had to, and it just fell flat. It just completely ruined whatever film that there was to ruin. It just like, it was just like, why would you put like a lightning flash there? Why would you hard cut to that? Like, why? Like this transition makes no sense. Like, why did that happen? Like, they, like, just constantly back to back to back to back. I just found myself asking myself that question of why this? Why did you make this decision? Why does this happen here? It just didn't make sense to me. So editing, terrible, just like everything else. The creature and costume designs looked cheap. It was plain as day that they looked absolutely terrible. Madam Web's costume in the ending is laughable. Horrible decisions were made in this film, just in case you were not catching my drift. The one final thing about this film that I think is the absolute worst, okay, because like I said before, 3/4 of this film is bearable. It is terrible. It is bad. It's like a medium level of worse, to where I could have bared it and I could have gotten to the end, because this film got so close to the end and I'm like, wait a minute, we're in the final act right now. And you know, people were talking about this like it was the worst thing ever, like it's worse than the MCU or something like that. But it honestly, like, even though it was bad, because there was this weird euphoric sort of medium level of bad that everything was in the film, it was bearable. It was a bearable experience up to the final act. The worst thing about this film is the final act. Everything in the final act is horrible, terrible, vile, conspiratory levels of bad. This is like everything that I mentioned was a problem before. Costume design, acting, writing, special effects, editing, pacing, everything that was a problem before is 10 times worse in the ending. The last 15 minutes of this film is probably, most likely, I have nothing else to compare to. That might be the worst sequence I've ever seen in any film or show in my entire life. Everything is horrible. Everything is terrible. It makes zero sense how they're able to beat him. It's all left up to chance. It's all left up to like destiny or some weird shit like that. Everything is horrible, terrible. Like I have no other words. I can think of nothing else. It wasn't until the last 15 minutes that I figured out why this film was despised. It finally made sense to me when I saw the final act, because I was ready. I was ready to walk out of this film and make a video called Madam Web Wasn't That Bad. I was ready to do that, boy. I was ready to be that one guy. That one guy who saw what the film was, but, you know, didn't think that it was as bad as what everyone else was saying. It still would have been bad, but it would have been bearable. It would have been a bearable experience that I would have walked out of and been like, you know what? That wasn't that bad. I was ready to say that it wasn't that bad. I really don't want to leave on a sour note, so to give this film, you know, just to think about one good thing about the film, call me shallow, call me low, call me bottom of the barrel, call me whatever you want, alright? I'm a simple man, okay? The one positive about this film is the beautiful women, alright? Sydney Sweeney, Dakota Johnson, Isabella Merced, frickin' Emma Roberts, Celestia O'Connor, absolutely beautiful women, and they definitely were a part of what made the movie bearable in those first 3/4 until it absolutely careened off the edge in the final act. Alright, so call me a simple guy, call me shallow, whatever, alright? This film has absolutely no depth to it, nothing is good about it at all, so I had to stretch, and this is what I stretched, and this is what I caught, alright? Madam Web, in conclusion, is a horrible film. It is a terrible film. Everything about it is absolutely terrible. Everything about it, the acting, the special effects, the writing, the editing, the creature and costume designs, the pacing, everything about this film is terrible. But I was ready to say that it was bearable. I was ready to say that you know, people are being a bit too harsh on it. I was ready to say that all that bad stuff, right? I was ready to say that it was bad, but not that bad. But then I saw the ending, and it was absolutely horrible. So it is horrible. It is terrible. I have nothing else to say other than that. I know I've said horrible and terrible like 100 times in this video, but that's just all there is to talk about. That's just all that there is to this movie. It's just a cluster of what decisions are these? Like what? Like why? It's just a huge neon sign of why. Why did this happen? Why did that happen? Why was this decision made? Why does this film exist? What audience are you shooting for? There is no audience for this film. That's why it's bombing. You know, it's great to see Sydney Sweeney. It is always great to see Sydney Sweeney. All right, it's always great to see Dakota Celeste. I remember her from Stella and the Spades. She was great in that. These are all good actors, good to great actors who have done way better work in way better projects that you should watch. Okay, watch those instead. Do not watch this movie. Do not waste your time, please. To be completely honest with you, walking out of Madam Web, not gonna lie to you, even though I thought that it was terrible, I would still rather watch it than some movies that I think are better. And I know that it's not just me out there that thinks this. It is the worst film of the year so far. Probably is going to be the worst film of the year unless something else comes out that beats it. I'm kind of tired of saying terrible and horrible, so yeah. Thank you for watching. Don't forget to like, share, comment, subscribe. And yeah, Madam Web is a very interesting film. It's a very interesting study. See you all next time. This has been Fraser Talks. Goodbye.
Now that's the nicest news I've heard all day. And you can call me Slade. Oh, Sam. Better tell that deputy that I'll find time for him later.